Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Court to Court with the Esquire Coach, where we love to talk about all things sports, entertainment, NIL, and the law. May is Mental Health Awareness Month, so I thought that it would be great to have a discussion about NIL and college athletics and athletes' mental health. So today's episode, we have a very special guest joining us to explain a little bit about mental health and NIL and the impact that it's having on college athletes. So today we have joining us Miss Alisha Lassiter. Alisha is a licensed clinical social worker associate and the owner of Stay in the Game LLC, providing holistic sports therapy to athletes and their families. Alisha is also an outpatient mental health therapist, event speaker, and panelist. She also serves as a content contributor and chat consultant for Athlete Talk, a mental health wellness app for athletes. Alisha believes in helping athletes see their worth, guiding them in cultivating a desire for self-advancement, advocacy, and becoming an influential impact in their communities and families. So, Alisha, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Cassandra.
Yeah, so if you could just start by maybe telling us a little bit more about yourself.
Sure. I think you did an excellent job with that. But as she mentioned, I'm a licensed clinical social worker associate. I love all things sports, but specifically basketball. Just a little bit about myself. I used to be a previous teacher. I love teaching my middle schoolers. But with that, I just wanted more, out of life. And since I grew up playing basketball with my cousins, I just figured it would be great to help people while also pursuing the game of sport. Yeah. That's the
This
short version.
fellow basketball over here, I too play basketball, so we definitely have that
Okay.
in common.
I love
Um,
it.
so like I said, it's Mental Health Awareness Month, and I talk a lot about NIL, so I thought it would be a great opportunity to talk about NIL and mental health with you right now. So, college athletes gained the right to profit from their NIL in 2021, and um, but I wanted to know from your perspective, since the introduction of NIL in 2021, how has that changed the college athlete experience?
Well, with Stay in the Game, we pretty much we provide holistic therapy, which caters to the athlete and the community because they are in the spotlight so much. But we care about the individual first and foremost, which is behind the scenes. So with NIL has put the athlete in the spotlight even more. And so with that, that comes with a positive impact, but then it also can lead to a negative impact. The weight that athletes carry as far as like performance, generally speaking, is heavy. But then when you add NIL, that's really it's a whole nother level. It's almost like is it attainable? How do you carry all that on your own, even though there's great excitement? So I believe the impact that it has on their mental health can very well be unpredictable.
So are you finding that you're seeing it earlier now on some issues with athletes and mental health since NIL has been the thing for college athletes? Because now you have high school athletes preparing, and then in some states you have high school athletes who can engage in NIL, which may then lead to middle school athletes preparing for this. Yeah.
Right. I think you kind of just answered everything. You are seeing it earlier in life and in the game or whatnot. And with that, there's so much excitement that comes with it. And I know we'll dig into it a little more. So I don't want everything to kind of bleed together, but you're seeing it more and you're seeing the positives. But then a lot of people are overlooking the negative impact because athletes want to be able to be in the spotlight in that regard. And then this is something fairly new. They're not going to necessarily admit or confide in someone if they're struggling with their mental health. You're finally, you're on the road and on the path to, meeting scouts, but you're getting more in return. Before time, that would cause I would say an athlete to kind of shirk back and just focus on the sport versus acknowledging their mental health. So are we seeing it earlier? Yes.
I think that dovetails next to my next question is like, what are some unexpected mental health concerns that you've seen with athletes since NIL was introduced?
Well, I would say that this is unexpected, but also expected. For example, if you have an athlete that had already previously struggled with anxiety and or depression or even suicidal ideations, that's something that would definitely be increased, possibly with the introduction of NIL. Why is that if it's such a great thing? Well, the reason being is the spotlight holds a lot of pressure. Even though a lot of us, were made to be in the spotlight, some people shirk back from the spotlight, but they're made to be in it because they can handle it mentally. Imagine people grabbing after you all the day long, cameras in your face, people want to hear what you have to say, family pulling on you on this side, friends on this side, significant other somewhere else. Where is there time for your thoughts? And then do you even know what your thoughts consist of because you got so many people in your ear? And it's fine to have certain individuals in your ear because you're going to need that, certain. But with that, it's a lot because I would say something that you don't necessarily think athletes will struggle with NIL is isolation, because if you have so many voices, sometimes athletes look for a moment to retreat and just be to themselves. So they are struggling with anxiety and or depression or other mental health challenges in private that may not have previously surfaced. You just never know what can, I guess, trigger it, because perhaps they have been suppressing the loss of a loved one or the recovery of an injury, or maybe they broke up with their, partner or, girlfriend or boyfriend, whatever the case may be, you know.
It's interesting to me that you mentioned isolation and couch it in that term, because my next question is just, we already know that we have college athletes, right? So they're in college, which makes them a student, which makes them have the full-time responsibilities that come with being a student. And then they're athletes, which has the full-time responsibilities that come with being an athlete, and then a performing athlete, so you can get the playing time and get all of those things. Now we're adding this piece of NIL, which in itself is another full-time job. They are essentially becoming what I call entrepreneurial college athletes, right? Which is a job in and to itself. So the point that you're making about them having trouble finding time to isolate, I think makes sense. So my question is, how do college athletes, from your experience or your perspective, handle the added pressure that comes with NIL?
It's new territory. It's new territory for everybody. Unfortunately, you have those out there who's presenting the NIL to them, make it seem like something new and shiny, which I'm not saying it's not a good thing. It is, but too much of anything can become detrimental. At least that's my mindset on things. So I think that the impact it has on individuals, it does not allow them to know who they can trust right offhand. Because if we really want to dig into a little bit more, you need a credible other. Let me say that first. You need someone who's credible and reliable. What I mean by that is you have seen their track record and how they treat you. You've seen their track record and how you're able to trust them and confide in them. And then they don't switch up on you, when something like this comes up. And so that can consist of a credible individual can definitely parents, but I feel like we're going to dive more into that in a few. But that can consist of a mentor. And a mentor does not have to look like you or I, have to be the same gender or any of that. You want to have someone who you don't just look up to, but someone who has been down the road you have and successfully, I guess I would say, tread that kind of path. So if individual struggles go unmanaged, I believe it only increases with NIL. Hopefully, I was ready to go. So hopefully, I covered your question.
Yeah, no, definitely. So when NIL was being talked about and being suggested, social media was intended to be like a major player in the space, because multiple athletes before NIL was a thing for them had hundreds of thousands, some even millions of followers on social media. So there enters the opportunity to engage with brands and now have sponsored deals and things like that. So but as we know, social media is not always the most friendliest place, right? So could you talk a little bit about the role of social media in NIL and how that has affected athletes' mental health?
Yes. Again, I refer to athletes as individuals first. So sometimes, well, you have several people that actually don't get on social media, and you would be surprised. But I guess it's for that reason, that very reason. They don't want someone tracking their every move. And even if you're on social media, like you and I are, we don't put personal things on there perhaps unless we want people to know. So I think having that self-discipline is key, because as I mentioned before, too much of anything can be detrimental. Social media is a great resource. It's a great tool to help promote yourself, start a business, whatever the case may be. Connect with like-minded people in case you are an athlete, but you feel invisible when you're not on the court or field. So you have trouble connecting with people just as a person, right? So it can be beneficial. But when you're doing good, everybody's applauding. When you make a mistake, because we're human, but when you make a mistake, people don't see the humanity part. They expect you to perform top notch all the time. And again, that is the respect, depending on the sport you're in. Yeah, that has huge validity. However, you have analysts, you have commentators, you have reporters, you have fans, you have friends, you have the world in general coming at you. And so you're scrolling all that FaceTime and technology. It does something to your mind mentally. It creates a pattern and a cycle. And then as we continue to think that way, your body reacts in that way, in a negative way, especially if you're reading negative comments about yourself. If you're reading something good, you're like, yeah, I read it. Let's go. Let's get it. They love me. If they're bashing you, you want to stop looking, but something in you wants to keep looking. So then that's when you need those credible others to say, hey, you need to chill on that and put the electronics down, put the phone down. And it may seem like, well, I'm grown, or I'm in college, I know what to do. Again, if it's new territory, you need somebody with a some type of a track record to help guide you through that. So I think social media is beneficial, but even the average individual who is not an athlete, if you have to take a break from social media periodically, what makes us think athletes don't need to?
And
Saying.
I think that at some point everybody probably feels like they need a break from
Right.
social media, especially in this case where it feels like it's a part of your job, right? Because a lot of the deals with athletes, their deliverables is posting on social media. So when they have those deals, and that is the requirement, what the company is expecting from them, then how can they balance that? How would you suggest that they balance that with also taking a break from social media and not getting too caught up in the comments?
Well, I think if the individuals in NIL want them to promote, which I understand that, perhaps should have a publicist that can assist them with that, put people in place that can help work that for them if they know that's not their strongest suit. Now, I understand to help the athlete build confidence in themselves and post and engage is needed because you can't avoid that. If you're in the spotlight, you're ranking high, or you have a story to tell that the general public has grabbed a hold to, whatever the case may be, or you bounce back, which resilience is a big part of being an athlete, you're going to have to be, on the mic. You're going to have to be on camera. So you can't avoid it. But somebody has to be accountable for these athletes to help them if they're presenting them with these kinds of, I guess I would say, rewards or accolades. Okay, so they need people there who can say, okay, that's enough FaceTime, that's enough time in front of the camera, or help at least kind of write them a script. Not because they're not intelligent, but that's how you set boundaries. That's how you care for people. You recognize the areas in which they're kind of struggling in. You don't just hype them up because they're great in the sport. The individual has to carry the athlete. Like the athlete is going to work and perfect that craft, but the athlete is going to be the athlete. What about the person that's struggling behind the scenes? But then just kind of like, I'm good because we're told to be tough. True. But at what point, even a even a car, one of the toughest cars, malfunctions at some point. They have to keep regular maintenance on it. Am I right?
Absolutely,
How much
absolutely.
more do we need to do that for ourselves?
So, many athletes see NIL opportunities as a way to help their families, right? So, how has this pressure of being able to maybe, now you're in a position where you can kind of provide a little bit financially for your family, how has that pressure factored into NIL and the athlete's mental health?
Well, first I want to say the athletes that want to help their families, I applaud them. I think that's an amazing heart to have, and you should, you know. But I also think with that posture should not be the first posture. The first posture is what is NIL, which I think you do a great job at explaining that.
Oh, thank you.
What is,
Thank
you're welcome. You guys need to check her videos
you.
out. What is NIL? And again, the thinking process may not be there, if people are just kind of awestruck, but what is NIL and how does it benefit me? And then with that, parents have to have a level of accountability because a lot of parents have sacrificed time, money, been on the road, taking care of the kids, using words of encouragement that may be very flavorful throughout the years. Whatever the case that may be, I think the parent holds a lot of value in the athlete's life because they're the ones that have been there since the beginning. And so the parent is pulling on them to take certain deals, which they should guide them, but they're pulling on them to go ahead and help them before they can get situated. how can you help somebody with something you don't have yet? And then once you get it, don't you need to, or don't we think, you should kind of figure out what is the right thing to do with this? Because athletes don't tend to think about, okay, I'm in high school, I'm going to get drafted possibly before college or during college or at the end. They're not even thinking about the future, which you need to go ahead and put things aside for that. Because what is the average, time for a NFL player to be in a league? What is it? 4 to 5 years,
Yeah,
something
it's
of
like
that nature.
for
Uh,
in the NFL, it's like 3 years. Yeah,
yeah, okay, there we have it.
yeah,
In some case, it may be a little bit longer, but that's the average. And then you got the NBA. Yes, there are other leagues, but my whole point is being able to have a financial plan in place is critical. And if nobody in your family has done it, it's okay. You could be the first, but you have to do your research. You don't go through school all this time and not know how to research something. Google can be your friend, and I'm not being funny. I'm just saying, before you start divvying up the money, realize how hard you have worked to get where you are. Thank the people that have helped you, and you will not forget them. But first, you need to make sure you're set, because the last thing you want to do is have an injury, and then where's the endorsements?
exactly. You can't take care
Playtime.
of everybody else if you don't take care of yourself first.
And then everybody's, deuces.
Yeah,
you
yeah,
know.
that definitely can happen as well. You mentioned a little earlier, like cases where athletes may have suffered a major loss in their family, such as the death of a loved one. In those cases, how do athletes balance such a loss and conduct in conjunction with their academics and being an athlete and now their NIL responsibilities? And what tips do you have for athletes who may find themselves in that situation?
Cassandra, that's a pretty tough situation. We don't know who has been instrumental in helping, athletes become who they are. Sometimes it's not even the parents solely or the coaches. It could be a teacher, or it could be, I don't know, a neighborhood auntie or somebody from around the way. Yeah, even a grandmother, whoever it is. I would say the time away at college can feel like a grief experience. They may not have even passed away. It's just the separation, like separation anxiety. Of course, balancing studies, and if somebody actually did pass away, that's another whole different level of blow. So with that, I have been fortunate enough to work for the 988 Lifeline, Suicide Prevention Lifeline. And so with that, I served as a crisis counselor, and that's available to anybody. It's not just athletes, but it's a very private space. And if you don't feel like talking, you text 988. You may see the billboards everywhere nowadays, or you may see an ad on TV, but 988 is really, really critical, because people want their identity protected. They don't want it to be shared with anybody. And they hear the word suicide in 988 suicide prevention, but it's not just for that. It's for those who are feeling isolated and lonely, or the pressures from NIL, but they don't want their family to know because they don't want anybody mad, or they don't want the coach to know because they worked so hard to get them there, or depending on the coach you have, they may be less concerned about your mental health and well-being and more concerned about how much money you can make them and you. So 988 is a great resource, I would say. Athlete mental health apps. I was going to mention this, a little later, but Athlete Talk um, is a mental health and wellness app for specifically, I believe, for collegiate athletes. Now, that is by Dr. Emmett Gill. I believe he'll be speaking at the Black Student Summit pretty soon. He's actually going to be speaking on the topic of NIL. So again, that's Athlete Talk. That is a great resource. So look that up when you guys get a chance.
So are the athletes able to like create a profile and they can get
Yeah, yeah.
access to different mental health providers? Is that how it works, or after?
Yes. Well, they have different, I guess I would say, options there. So I don't want to speak too soon. So
Yeah.
thank you for
Okay.
asking that.
Yeah.
I know they kind of tend to partner with different universities and things of that nature. So yeah, I believe they can create a profile. I think I saw at one point they had a subscription as low as like $10, like $9.99. You go from there. But they have various options. Okay. So thank you for asking that, for that clarification. Um, School grief counselors. Again, that's something that's right on campus. And granted, you may not have enough counselors, but that's why I'm listing several. Um, and then, of course, myself, which I'll bet you a little later.
Of course, of course. This is just one question that just popped in my mind as I have, heard instances of this several times is, now we watch the March Madness tournament or like any college sports game or professional sports game, and we're seeing like gambling, DraftKings, pot bets, things like that. And I've heard of instances where um athletes or students may not come to class the next day because their team lost, or maybe something that they did that caused the team to lose, or they didn't perform as high, didn't score as many points. So now somebody's bet that they made is off, and they may receive some type of ridicule or pressure from their classmates for not performing, and that person now losing money based on their bet. So I don't know if you had any experience with helping athletes who have had to deal with the gambling and their mental health. If you could just talk a little bit about that. Yeah.
I got you. That's a really interesting topic because I've been watching the playoffs like crazy, and you see the gambling, and it's just in your face. And I'm like, when did that shift take place? I'm sure it's always been there, but now it's like, hey, here it is on a silver platter. So then, if it's like that for adults, and adults tend to kind of struggle when they lose, I mean, you see people posting on social media how they have thrown their TV up against the wall because they lost a bet. Like the things that they work hard for, they're now destroying. And so, as it relates to athletes, that is heavy to balance. I would say don't gamble with what you can't afford. Okay, I'm not here to speak on whether gambling is good for you or not. But again, too much of anything can be detrimental. And so don't gamble with what you can't afford, whether it be your finances, money, the vehicle that you may have earned or may have been given to you, whatever the case may be. Better yet, your life, because people don't play fair. And that's just real talk. People do not play fair. And so one way or another, they want to get, sometimes they want to get, what is it, revenge. And so maybe an individual you can trust and rely on, I'll take it to the locker room now, maybe your coach or that assistant coach, and the athletic trainer you may have built a rapport with. I think that's important to kind of get your mindset right so that you can figure out how to approach this situation properly if you find yourself in that type of predicament. You know what I mean, Cassandra? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
There's so many ways we could approach that, but for time's sake, I think that's a good condensed version.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, if you want to expound a little bit, you can, because it is, I think, becoming like a growing concern, with people, and the effect that it's having on athletes in the classroom. Like nobody should not be going to class because they fear some type of retribution or something because of a gamble that somebody else made. Like you didn't make them bet on you like that. Like they decided to do that,
Yeah. I
Um,
think it's I think it's important to know the kind of personality you have. That's why it's
yeah.
good to get to know yourself. Because if you have, hear me out, y'all. If you have an addictive personality, and what I mean by that, it may not be substance use. It may not be overeating. It's a thing. But it could be, ooh, I want to try this. I'm gonna just try it one time. And we're not even talking about, drugs in this regard. But I just want to try this. And then you hit a high that you have never felt before, and you just keep going and going and going. So I think it's good to know your personality. But there was another part to that, Cassandra. You were talking about athletes going to class, and clearly
Yeah.
they, repeat that last part for me.
I was saying, I've heard of instances where the athlete may not feel comfortable going to class because somebody in the class has made a bet based on their performance, and they, didn't hit the mark, and now they've lost some money,
Got you, got you. I think I was approaching it from another point where athletes were actually gambling using
Yeah, that's
technology.
that's part of it too. Yeah.
You're using technology to gamble. But again, like you said, they made the bet. And how do you handle the pressures and that type of performance? As you can see, there's no easy answer, and to just blurt out something does not mean, hey, that's the end all be all. Um, some people may see it as tattling. We're grown. If you need help, you ask for help. If you got an instructor that you trust, if you know somebody or campus police that you might trust, again, I say first, kind of go to the coach because chances are they may know the individuals. I don't want people to walk around and live in fear because somebody placed a bet on them. I know we don't want to have to take it as far as getting the local authorities involved, but if anything, I want you to be able to advocate for yourself with your voice, not just like when you're playing sports. That may be an area where you shine in and you get your release at, but then I don't want you walking off the field or court and looking over your shoulder because somebody else is after you. So I would say take the bold step like you do in your sport. And then if you need to reach out to someone who can handle that, such as some type of law enforcement or a coach so they can talk with someone, The reason being is people have more resources than what you know. Don't think you have to handle it all. You handle enough, you know. So those are
Definitely.
some answers.
So we talked a little bit about like financial responsibility earlier. So as college athletes make more money from their NIL, they have new financial responsibilities in terms of they have to be more in tune to their how they properly file their taxes, make sure that they're withholding properly and things like that. So how has this new need for financial literacy and financial planning affected athlete mental health?
I think the excitement of it feeds us as a people, and then it definitely feeds the athlete. I think the assumption is that athletes are not well versed on certain topics, and some very well may not be. But then there are some that we also need to give credit to that won't allow people to, I guess, mishandle their money. So when it comes to taxes and things of that nature, find someone to do it the right way. Because if not, you're going to end up being in the spotlight, but not for your game and not for what it is you do well, but for something that you didn't necessarily plan for. If you don't know what to do, you ask someone who has a proven track record on how to do it. Okay. And athletes, this is not just for collegiate, this is for adults too. We all want, when it comes to tax season, we all want to get money back. But baby, if you're not due for it, just let it be. You're gonna make it up eventually. And so that's just, I guess, one aspect I think I would say. But as it pertains to the money aspect the finances, financial literacy is important. I think I saw Angel Reese, and was it Magic Johnson?
Yes.
They're coming
The,
together.
the program in Baltimore.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Was it financial literacy course?
Hmm.
I think that that's amazing. So you have someone, I would say who's a legend, and then you have someone else who is a female, a black female at that, which is amazing. Who is also speaking to, I believe, her age group, and they're coming together in the world of sports to actually produce that. That shows you that you're never too old to learn and give back, and then you're never too young to know what it is you're doing and to reach out to someone else who knows what they're doing and to partner. I think that's just a good dynamic to kind of look at.
Definitely. I'm very excited to see, how that program benefits the community.
Right.
So what is one thing that you wish that every college athlete knew before entering their first NIL deal from a mental health perspective?
Well, I have to stay true to stay in the game. It has a dual purpose. Yes, I love sports, but what you can't see is, I guess I would tilt it down a little more. It has a brain there, and then it has various sports going around it. I would say know who you are and understand that you are continually evolving, but you got to know the core of who you are so that you can make sound decisions. And we all battle back and forth with, should I do this? Should I not do this? Oh, this would be good. I implore you guys to know who you are, because the things and advantages like NIL that you have now were not there, 10, 15 years ago, correct? And
Right.
so you need to know even more now so that you don't blow up your future before it gets started. I mean, that's the kind of, I mean, there's other ways of saying that, but that's the kind of direct way of saying that. Um, there was something else you asked me. I'm really again big on advocating for yourself and take. We're observing people. We know if we like somebody, we understand. We're observing. We probably have scoped them out typically beforehand. No matter who it is. So if you like a car or a pair of shoes, right? Whatever the case may be, or jewelry. If you know that there's someone that you can depend on, I would say call on them if they have a proven track record with their character. If they don't present as shady and just want to show you, oh, you can get this. I would say rely on them so they can help you make good decision making. Okay. So that way you can start building a legacy, and then your mental health remains at the top of its game. And a lot of people don't really understand what mental health is. They just think, oh, if you were kind of, seemingly born with this, or you face some type of trauma, I mean, your brain is a muscle. It's constantly, working. You have to be able to provide it with the proper rest, nutrients, what you feed it. And I'm not just talking about with food, I'm talking about the things we watch and listen to, whatever it is, the people we watch and listen to, and then what we think of ourselves, which is the first thing. So I want everybody to kind of dig deeper than just thinking, oh, ain't nothing wrong with me. It's not about that. We want to make sure that you understand your life is more than you throwing on a jersey. And I love sports, but this is where you want to start. Who are you?
I'm glad that you said it like that, as far as like identifying who you are and what it is that's important to you. Because even when I talk to athletes who ask me, how can I position myself for NIL, and the first thing that I tell them is that assess what you want to do, who you want to be, not just on the court or on the field, but your interests. If all of your interests, align with your athletics, fine. But if you have interest in engineering or the beauty industry, then you should talk about that. So hearing you say that that's the same advice that you would give from a mental health perspective is rather enlightening, because it's kind of like they're doing the dual work, like the work of finding out who it is that they want to be and what they want to present, and it'll benefit them with their NIL opportunities as well as their mental health as well.
And
So
check this out right quick. You know, if you find that you made a mistake or didn't make the right decision, or chose someone that thought was trustworthy, and they talked a real good game, whether you knew them or not, don't beat yourself up about it. That can increase the likelihood of like mental health struggles. We have all made mistakes, and no, NIL was not there, a decade ago. However, everybody has messed up in some regard. And we're sitting in front of you today because we want people to either learn from our mistakes or also enlighten them based upon what we have embarked on. So it's okay, but be willing to ask for help.
um definitely. So now, I would like to ask you to tell us a little bit more about Stay in the Game, and any other resources that listeners can go to find support and guidance for helping athletes navigate NIL or just mental health in general.
I'd be happy to. Yeah. So stay in the game. What is stay in the game? Well, it's a mental health and sports related business that's really catered toward holistic therapy. And if you're not really kind of, privy to what holistic therapy is, really it's just involving mental, physical, psychological, emotional, relationship, your environment. It's involving spiritual. It's just involving all the things, all the puzzle pieces, I like to call it, that help to contribute to make up who you are. So you want to make sure those aspects are healthy. So we provide holistic therapy to athletes, but I believe an athlete is best supported through their environment. So we also provide that for their families. And the ways that we do that, a few of the ways that we do that with individual sessions, with the athlete, understanding who you are, where you are in life, the game, and on and on and on. You have to contact me for more information. Another way would be for athletes who may have had a child, and you're trying to figure out how to navigate through that with you being on the road, dealing with NIL, and just dealing with perhaps a partner, a previous partner, that maybe y'all are just not on the same page. That's the best way to put it. We offer the therapy services for that. If you happen to have gotten married, we offer therapy services for that. And then the family part comes in with our fourth session with family therapy. And last but not least, in this regard, I do speaking engagements. So I'm a panelist, individual speaker, as you can see. And so I go and I educate, I would say coaching staff. It's not just women empowerment, but it is women. I talk about other things than just mental health, of course. But my desire is to really cater to the athlete, and so that they know that they are seen. And then, of course, I would be glad to cheer you on in your respective sport. So that's stay in the game. As far as and you can go to stayinthegame.com. All right. As far as other, I would say helpful resources. I mentioned 988 Suicide and Crisis Lifeline. Okay. Don't let the suicide scare you. Trust me, more people, more athletes have dealt with things than what you would have imagined in private. Okay. Headspace. These are a few apps: Headspace, Calm, Mood Fit. These are apps that you can sign up for. Some have free trials, others have subscriptions that you have to kind of pay for in advance. But these are definitely what they say to get you in the right headspace. Space. Calm can calm you before a game and or at night. The Mood Fit kind of checks your mood, so you mentally can stay fit and physically.
Thank you. Thank you for all of those valuable resources. I'm sure, if anyone needs them, they'll be sure to reach out. You mentioned your website once, but are there any other like social media handles or anything where you could tell people where to follow you and how to connect with you?
Absolutely. You can find me on Instagram at Stay in the Game LLC. So stay and then the letter N, the game LLC. You can also find me on LinkedIn. That's under my actual name, Alisha Lassiter. And then it'll go from there, Alisha Lassiter, MSWLCSWA. Then, of course, again, my website, stayinthegame.com. And if you happen to be on Facebook, it's just Stay in the Game.
Well, I would like to thank you for joining us today and teaching us all about mental health and how athletes can get resources to help if they're struggling. And again, just thank you for being here.
My pleasure, and thank you because you are able to simplify how NFL, not NFL, how NIL impacts the lives of not just athletes, but those around them and what it is. So thank you.
Thank you.